Hello, judges. Thank you for your time today. My name is Michael Brouse.
And my name is Katie East. For the last several months, we have been developing our instructional program with the goal of teaching younger students about one of the most prevalent forms of disease in the medical field.
Genetically inherited diseases. That's right. An estimated 300 million people worldwide have some form of genetic disease. Whether it's cystic fibrosis or sickle cell anemia, the medical field is saturated in genetic ailments.
It's no wonder why an estimated $3 billion is spent studying genetics in the United States alone.
But it is a wonder how little genetic diseases are covered in the science curriculum in Florida.
Through this presentation, we aim to solve that issue.
How, you may ask?
Through an array of interactive activities.
First, we introduced our students to the field of genetics through a review of genetic terminology and inheritance, the latter of which was tested using a digital Punnett square worksheet distributed through the use of Google Jamboard technology.
A blank worksheet, along with the provided answer key and an example of a student response, can be found on page 9 of the portfolio. This activity served as a refresher for the students and a warm-up for what would be the basis of the material covered later in the presentation.
Then, we continued our presentation by getting to the heart of it all, genetic diseases. In our lesson, we covered 3 genetic diseases in great detail: sickle cell anemia, cystic fibrosis, and Down syndrome.
These diseases are relatively well known, and their causes, symptoms, and treatments are relatively simple, making them the perfect introduction to genetic disease for students.
We reviewed these diseases in great detail, providing students with an in-depth understanding of each. The full slideshow from the presentation can be found on pages 10 through 13 of the portfolio.
The students' understanding of each genetic disease was then put to the test.
We presented students with 3 patients, each afflicted with a genetic disease covered in the presentation. The symptoms of each patient were described to the students, who were then tasked with diagnosing each patient.
Based on this diagnosis, we asked students to give each of our patients a treatment plan. We discussed diagnoses and treatments of each patient in great detail, ensuring that every student understood what the correct answers were and why. The activity being performed can be found on page 7 of the portfolio, and the slides from the presentation for this activity can be found on page 10.
And as a final assessment of the cumulative comprehension of the material covered in the presentation, a Kahoot quiz is administered to the participants. This fostered a friendly competition amongst the students, who all aimed to answer the questions as fast and as accurate as possible. The Kahoot in its entirety can be found on pages 13 through 15 of the portfolio, and the students in the Kahoot can be found on pages 7 through 8.
They were asked to perform fast, accurate recalls of relevant information in order to win the Kahoot, allowing Michael and I to engage just how well the students understood genetic disease. We could tell through the speed and accuracy of their answers that the students were understanding the material, even being able to apply it to situations outside of what was presented in the slideshow.
Through this lesson, we're proud to say that we cultivated a new sense of scientific inquisitiveness in these students, especially in regards to genetic disease. We also saw significant improvements in the students' understanding of the material, as shown by the dramatic improvement of the responses for the post-test versus the pre-test. These assessments can be found on pages 16 of the portfolio.
Additionally, an example of a student response to the post-test and a graph comparing the students' performance across both tests can be found on page 17 of the portfolio.
And despite taking place on an online medium, we were still able to capture the attention of the students and accomplish our objectives for the lesson. These included
identifying the connection between genes and disease and how mutations can occur,
displaying how genetic diseases can be passed on to offspring,
researching and understanding 3 different genetic diseases and their respective causes,
comprehending a multitude of treatment options available for genetic diseases,
and diminishing the stigma surrounding genetic diseases through education and constructive discussion. This information can be located on page 2 of our portfolio.
We taught 27th grade students aged 13 through 14 with a meticulous instructional plan that included an introduction, a pretest, PowerPoint presentation, Punnett square activity, diagnosis activity, Kahoot testing, a post-test evaluation survey, and a parent/guardian informatic form.
The pretest and post-test consisted of 4 questions to gauge the students' collective conceptual knowledge before and after the lesson. We are pleased to say that the average test score improved significantly, increasing by almost 45%. Additionally, the students' responses to the evaluation survey was overwhelmingly positive, with almost every student reporting that they enjoyed the lesson and that they felt like they learned something from it. These are among the most important results collected, as we wanted to ensure that the lesson had an impact on the students and that they enjoyed the presentation. An overview of the students' responses to this evaluation form are shown on page 18 of the portfolio.
Through the material discussed in our lesson and through our diligent planning, we believe that we have successfully helped to spread awareness about a largely ignored field of medicine, encouraging these students to further pursue this topic and immerse themselves in the world of genetic disease.
Thank you for your time.